Thank you, Jason. And I'd just like to echo Jason's comments, thanking particularly Nerman from CRE Reduce, as well as Bonnie and Mignon from our team, who have really contributed greatly to the all the logistic organising for today, and hopefully will help it run very, very smoothly. So as Jason said, I'm Trent Yarwood. I'm the Clinical Director of the statewide Antimicrobial Stewardship Program. And I'd just like to acknowledge the Turrbal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, and pay my respects to Elders past and present, and as well to all of the Indigenous people of Australia, wherever people might be watching our presentation today. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Jeannette Young to open the proceedings on behalf of the Queensland Government, who have been major sponsors of this forum since its inception, and who really, you know, not to blow our own trumpet too much, have been major national leaders in the fight against drug-resistant infection. We're very fortunate that our program and that Queensland Health generally have been a long way ahead of the national curve in the fight against drug-resistant infection. So Dr. Young is the Queensland Chief Medical Officer and the Deputy Director General of the Prevention Division, which has responsibility for the development of a Queensland drug-resistant strategy, which I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about today. And it's my very great pleasure to welcome her to deliver the opening on behalf of the Queensland Government.
So thank you very much, Trent, and congratulations, Jason, on bringing this great group together. I mean, we had a dinner with a few of the people who've been involved last night, and it was just excellent to hear what's going on. Very reassuring, if I can say that. So good morning, everyone. First, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we're meeting, the Turrbal and Yagara people, and pay my respects to Elders past, present and emerging. And it's fantastic to see that one of the talks is actually looking at AMS for an urban Indigenous community. So I think it's important that whatever we do here in Queensland, I'll speak for Queensland as the Chief Health Officer here, that we always think what we can do for the most disadvantaged people in our community who are Indigenous Queenslanders. So, as you would be aware, sort of our journey compared to some other nations started quite late in this space, but also quite early. We've done a lot of work in some areas, and I think the work that's been done here in Queensland in stewardship has been fantastic. But we've not really, I think, until more recently, looked at that broader role with antimicrobial resistance and looking at the One Health approach involving agriculture and veterinary practice. So we had our first national antimicrobial resistance strategy back in 2015, which I felt was more just a list really of all the work that was being done, rather than looking at where we needed to strategically position ourselves going forward. And it's great to see that our second national strategy is now in the pipeline through the approval process up to ministers, and it's a lot more focused in terms of what are the real strategic issues we need to address as a nation. So we're now seeing that states are coming to the fore, which is really important. So here in Queensland, but also South Australia and Victoria are currently developing their own state-based antimicrobial resistance strategies. And that, I think, is one of the strengths of our country, that we are a federated country and we each do things a bit differently, and then we can see what works the best and take that up, and then we sort of leapfrog each other in terms of where we're going with our strategies. So it's great to see that we're starting to get that work being done. Here in Queensland, we first engaged with our chief executives from all our hospital and health services and the chairs of our boards back in 2017, and they said they thought that this was an extremely important issue for the health system in Queensland and wanted more work done. So once we can get those people engaged, because they're really important in setting the agenda for what health services believe is important. So our strategy that we've developed here in Queensland is really, again, looking at that One Health approach. So looking at human health, veterinary and agriculture as well, to look at what we need to do to work together. And I think that's been quite a strength. So we held a summit earlier this year in March that included similar people. Some of you in the room came along to that summit, and thank you very, very much. Plus, we also had a whole range of different clinicians, researchers, laboratory scientists, epidemiologists. We had executives from our hospital and health services and industry representatives, and that's when we really put together what we felt our strategy needed to be here. So the objectives of that summit were to agree on a vision, an aim for our strategy here in Queensland, work out the key objectives, and I always have the view that less is best because you might concentrate on them and achieve them rather than doing a whole enormous list of them. And then what are the priority actions to meet those objectives? So I'll just read out what the agreed vision from the day. It's not always successful to have a group wordsmith a vision, but I think we did a pretty good job. So Queenslanders recognise and manage antimicrobials as a valuable shared resource, maintaining their efficacy so that infections in humans and animals remain treatable, and strive to find and use alternatives to antimicrobials so that communities continue to benefit from the advances that antimicrobials enable. And then our strategy focuses on two broad ways to limit AMR. First, of course, judicious use of antimicrobials, but second, and in many ways just as important, to prevent and control infection. So the strategy has 6 objectives. I'm not going to go through, there were key focus areas for each. I won't go through that list. You'll be able to see it up on our website shortly. So I'll just pick out some of the things I think that are really important. So the first objective is, as always, of course, communication, education and training. You can never do enough in that space. What I think we absolutely have to do there is we have to engage better with the general population. That we've got some really good processes happening in our tertiary sector, and we're going to hear all about that. We've got good processes starting to happen in residential aged care, in our primary care sector, with vets, with a whole range of people. But I really don't think we've engaged yet with the general community. So I hope some of those hashtag things that everyone knows better than me are getting out to the general population in some way so that we can really engage them, because it's then that I think we'll see the biggest change in how people use antimicrobials. Then our second objective is coordinated antimicrobial resistance surveillance and response. And I do think we've done a lot of work to lead in that space, and it's been taken up at a national level. Then the third is antimicrobial stewardship, and that's been going on for quite some time, initially under the leadership of Crispin, who I saw somewhere right in front of me, there, under Crispin, and then Catherine took it on for a while before we lost her to Canberra, but I mean that might help us in other ways. And then Trent, of course, is leading it now. And I think it's been really, really good that this has been led out of one of our health services, not out of the department, and it's really taken on, and it's providing the support to those places that can't provide that support internally because they're too small. We've got some of our health services which are very, very small, but that leadership has been essential to the whole program. Then the fourth objection is prevention and control of infection, and one of my big things, of course, immunisation. If we can just make sure everyone's immunised, at least we won't get those diseases that then end up with bacterial infections as well. and of course control of infection and all of the hand hygiene work. And it was good to hear that you're going to look at facilities, so you're going to look at architecture. I just think that the fact that we've got newer hospitals with single rooms is so critical. If you're sick enough to be in hospital, you're sick enough to be in a single room and manage the infection and all of those other issues. Then the fifth objective is research, and last night at the dinner we heard quite a bit about where we should be going in the research space, and my plea is there, can we also look at behavioural change? How do we manage and how do we work with both health professionals, veterinary professionals and our community to change behaviour, because antibiotics have only been around, 100 years, less than 100 years, but the behaviours are quite entrenched, so there's a lot of work to do there. Then the sixth objective is governance, and most importantly of all, partnerships. It's really about creating those strong partnerships so that no one part of the sector can do this alone. It's got to be all of us working with the community. So our strategy is currently going through our departmental approval process to get endorsed, but that hasn't stopped us implementing it, of course. So we're well and truly, and I can see my team there are here today, so we'll be here getting other ideas. We'll be well and truly out there implementing our plan as we go through. So then if we look at some of the other levers we've got in our country that have been, I think, quite exciting. Since 2011, the Australian Commission on Safety and Quality in Healthcare's Healthcare Associated Infection Standard has applied to all hospitals, public and private, throughout the country. And I certainly use that lever because I licence all the private hospitals in Queensland. So I use that lever in the private sector as well. It's been excellent that we've got a standard that absolutely requires for accreditation, and hospitals can't continue to work without accreditation, that requires systems to be in place in hospitals to support and promote prevention and control of healthcare associated infections and improve antimicrobial stewardship. So I think that's a really important lever. Then we've got a whole lot of other levers here in Queensland. So as we've heard, the statewide antimicrobial stewardship program, then also the AUGTRAX and MedTrax databases, which we've had in place now for many years. So we've been quite proactive, I believe, in the area of antimicrobial resistant surveillance here. So a collaboration between Pathology Queensland, and I can see a lot of members, of course, from there here today, and the Communicable Diseases branch in the department, resulted in the establishment of a system of passive surveillance of routine susceptibility results from laboratory results throughout the state. We're very, very fortunate, and it's great to see that other states are following, that we have one public pathology system so we can get results from all of our hospitals and use that data very effectively. And then the Australian Commission on Safety and Quality in Healthcare has taken AUGTRAX, the system, to now put in place for national surveillance. So our job here now in Queensland, I think we've got most of the private labs involved, is to make sure we get all of them involved. So, because of course they have a lot more of the data from the community sector than we would see. So the MedTrax database contains, as well as that pathology data, we've then got the MedTrax database, which has antimicrobial usage going back to 2006 through to now for Queensland public hospitals. And that can be accessed by people so that they can look at their antimicrobial use and then look at resistance. And as we've heard, those two go hand in hand. And our stewardship program then is working towards enabling all of our hospital and health services to be able to access all of that data, because we know for clinicians that data is actually one of the most important levers to get behavioural change, because of course our clinicians are evidence-based. So if we can get that data and provide that evidence, we know that they're, you know, pretty well most of the way there, but we do still need the behavioural analysis. Then there's some other interesting things happening. I thought this was an interesting point I was given to speak about today, that Agricultural Victoria in April this year put in place an Australian-specific pledge page on the Public Health England Antibiotic Guardian website. Now, we've got to start doing stuff like that. We've got to start engaging communities, getting them to pledge. You know, there are so many things nowadays about, you know, you have this day and that day, but we've really got to make this more public and more known and engage people so that they become part of the solution to it all. And then I do like a quote from our chief vet. I don't know if she's here today, Alison Crook. I saw her in the airport last night in Canberra, but she's not made it here today. She's been fantastic in working with us in developing our strategic plan. And she's got, I think, a nice simple message. That's to use antibiotics as little as possible, as much as necessary. And sometimes we need those simple messages. I know the issue is extraordinarily complicated, but we've got to try and narrow it down and get some really simple messages out there that we can share with people. So congratulations on this day on bringing everyone together. I'm sure you're going to gain so much from hearing what other people are doing, and it'll keep up where we're going and what we need to do here in Queensland. So thank you for holding it here in Queensland.